Hi, it's Alexis, time management and productivity coach. I am starting a series. This is the first in this video series, and it's going to be all about habits, habit building, habit breaking, how to make habits easier, why we shouldn't rely on willpower and motivation as the ways to make habits, because those, are resources we don't always have access to. We're going to be talking about science-backed strategies for building habits, science-backed strategies for breaking habits. But in today's first video here, I just want to take a step back and talk about habits in general, right? And specifically, I want to talk about the habit loop and how we can use that no matter what strategies we're trying to employ to help us to build or break habits. Habits are hard. Habits take time. They take a lot of time, more time than we want, right? We've all probably heard this totally BS stat that it takes 21 days to build a habit, right? That's kind of the minimum that it takes. Habits can take, up to 9 months to build of consistent effort. The average is around 2.5 months of consistent effort to build a habit. And that is likely longer than the time that you have put in to build a habit, because we've all been fed this stupid lie about habits taking 3 weeks to build, which just really isn't true. So when we think about habits, we want to think about habit as a neutral term. A habit is just something you do automatically without having to think about it too hard or even at all, right? And so sometimes we think about good habits, we think about bad habits, but a habit is really just an automated behavior. And so when we understand that, it is helpful to look at this as a cycle, right? And so I want to share with you something that is called the habit loop. So the habit loop consists of 3 parts, and you can map any habit you have, good or bad, onto this habit loop. And this habit loop can then help you figure out, what you want to change, how you want to tweak it to either strengthen the habit or to stop yourself from doing the habit, right? If it's a bad habit. And so in the habit loop, we have 3 phases. The first one is the trigger, and this is sometimes called the cue or the context. And it's basically like, what is happening right before you do the automated behavior, right? What is the thing that is moving you towards the automated behavior? Now, then you have the routine, and the routine is actually just what we think of when we think of the habit, right? So if you have a habit of like biting your nails, you're probably just like the automatic routine is the biting of your nails, and you think of that as the habit. But really, that's just one part of it, right? There's something that happened before that, and there's something that's going to happen after that. And so it's all part of this loop. The last cycle, or the last section of this cycle, is the reward. So what reward is your brain getting when you do the thing, whatever the automatic behavior is, right? So when we think about this loop, we want to think about what is the context? What is the trigger for the habit? What is the habit, the behavior itself? And then what are we getting out of that? Like, why is our brain stuck in this cycle? Why do we want to keep doing it, right? And so let's give a couple of examples here to make this a little bit more concrete. So let's just say that, you have a habit of drinking coffee in the morning, right? Now, what is the context or the trigger? Usually that you wake up and you're sleepy and you want that caffeine, right? And so that's the trigger. The context is that you wake up. Then the behavior is that you make and drink that coffee, right? Or maybe you buy it and drink it, or tea or whatever is your morning beverage of choice. And then the reward is that you're getting caffeinated, right? And so your brain is like feeling more alert, etc. This is the cycle that keeps things going, right? Now, let's take what we might think of as more of a negative behavior, a negative habit, and see if we can apply it to the same thing. So let's say maybe that we are an emotional eater, right? So the first thing is going to be context or trigger cue. And what is this? In this case, it's usually kind of a stressful situation, right? So we're feeling like stress, anxiety, something like that. And then the behavior, the habit, the automatic behavior is going to be the stress eating, right? Or the emotional eating. So that is that we maybe find a snack that is very tasty, but maybe not quite so good for us, that we don't really want to do, but we're doing it anyways, and we're going to eat that snack. And then what is the reward that we're getting out of that? Like, how are we getting a reward out of a bad habit, right? Well, the reward is the comfort that we feel when we do this. So even if it's not like giving us a lot of comfort in our long-term efforts, in the moment, we're getting some comfort from it. And so that's what keeps happening, right? So when you think about this habit loop, and I want you to think about a habit you have right now and how you could map it onto this, we want to think about changing one element of the loop at a time, right? If you try to change everything at once, then that may be more difficult to make happen. But maybe we can change the context or the trigger, right? Maybe we can change the behavior just a little bit. Maybe we can replace something, right? Or maybe we can work towards changing what the reward is, right? I think that often it's easiest to change like the trigger, or to change, do some replacement with the habit, to really change that first. That may be the thing that is easiest. easiest. And I'm going to give you an example of on how this can work, right? So one of the things that studies find is that when people want to quit smoking cigarettes, that one of the easiest times for them to do this is when they moved house. Right? Because when they've moved house, they don't have the same physical triggers, the same physical context or cues anymore, right? Maybe they used to go out on their back porch and have a cigarette, or maybe, who knows what those things are. If they're not there anymore, then we have removed those cues and triggers. And so it is going to be easier to change that behavior, to reduce that behavior, that negative behavior. And so this is why we want to think about this structure and really understand what the components of a habit are, because it makes it easier for us to understand both what's happening and to see ways that we can use those stages to help us to change our habits for better or for worse. So in the next set of videos, I'm going to be talking all about different strategies, different science-backed strategies that you can use to build good habits that you would like to build. And then later in the year, I'm going to be doing a series about how to break bad habits, right? Using science-backed techniques. So make sure, if you want to see those videos, if you want to get this content, make sure you're subscribed, and I will see you next Monday.
Hey, video editor here. Just like Alexis said, make sure to subscribe because as you can see, only about 25% of the people that watch our videos are actually subscribed.